All right. Hello. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to our Amplified Solutions webinar on how to create a mentor program for your team or brokerage. My name is Lee Adkins. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Amplified Solutions, and I'm joined by the lovely and amazing Chris McDonough, who's the COO of Amplified Solutions. What's up, Chris?
Hello, happy to be here.
All right.
I love a mentorship program, so I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, me too. And for context, Chris and I have both put together mentor programs at teams and brokerages directly, as well as certainly helped other people. So, Chris, why don't you kick us off? Give a little bit of background on yourself and whatnot, and then we will. I'll drop some links in the chat, and then we'll dig right in.
Yes, absolutely. I came from a long real estate background. I was the broker in charge of, at one time, the number 10 team in the nation. We had roughly 225 agents and a very sophisticated operations system and CRM system. So I am sharing with everyone everything I learned and including how to make a mentorship program. So we are information and education first, but I did want to give you a heads up. We are going to tell you a little bit about Amplified Solutions in the last 2 to 4 minutes of our webinar here today. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what we do, stay on for those last couple minutes and how we can help your business grow. But if you're just here for the mentorship guide and information, you will be spared that. All right, Lee, tell us a little bit about your background.
Cool. So yeah, I got into this crazy business in 2006. Generally speaking, as a solo agent, I've worn every hat. I've been a team member. I've literally done all the things, brokerage, partner, you name it. But my big foray into operations in 2012, I joined with the team here in Atlanta, grew them pretty substantially, documents, guides, training, full shebang, and had a really good run, really good success with that. But a big part of that success was taking an agent that we grew. She came to us with a little experience, but not a lot. We really grew her into like our ideal agent and then had her ultimately mentor new agents as they came on. So, in fact, the agreement at the end of this guide we'll share is actually the actual agreement that I wrote and used for that program. So we'll share an actual agreement you can use as well, fill in blanks with your company name and X number of transactions and X percent. Um, but really excited to do that. And as Chris mentioned, I'm also very education first. Just dropped a link in the chat to our YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to check that out, tons of free videos on how to do all the things. And as Chris mentioned at the end, we'll cover a little bit about what we do for those who want to stay on, but we're not here to sales pitch you. We're here to educate. So
Absolutely.
there's one more link I'm going to drop in the chat as well. It's kind of a link tree style link that's got some quick ways to connect with us or learn more. So I just dropped that as well. So I'll turn it back to you, Chris.
I love it. Well, let's start first with why we want to have a mentorship program. What is the benefit that you see in taking the time to create this?
Yeah, and I think one of those too is a real self-assessment of your own ability and probably more so time than ability. Chances are most times people are good at selling real estate, and then a team or a brokerage kind of follows suit, and people kind of get thrown into that leadership ownership role. Whereas
Mhm.
maybe before they were just a really good agent and they attracted a lot of people and a lot of business, which is awesome, but changing that hat over to that, so number one, just being able to delegate some of this training. You're not the
Mhm.
only person on the team that's like, hey, how do I do this? Hey, what do I put in this blank? Hey, where's the W-9? Like all those sort of things. So I
The
think for one,
W-9.
just that's like my can you tell I had personal issues with the hey, where's I need the W-9? It's on the
Nightmares
internet.
about the W-9.
It's on
And
the internet.
and to your point, I think that as you grow your real estate organization or any organization really, you can't be the master of all things. And as you get, even if you're still in production, you're probably, hopefully, not selling as many houses as the top producer on your team. So, I think the best way to grow a team is by truly wanting to help others grow. I mean, yes, I'm sure there's certain people out there who are like, I want to make myself an empire. But the best way to retain people is by showing them that I really want to help you grow. And that's how you keep agents on your team and all of that. So, because are going to be less familiar with the process. And so that person who is one of your top producers will be more effective in teaching them because they're still in the thick of it. They're still hashing it out at the kitchen table for those listings.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that honestly I didn't even put in the notes or maybe the guide as we reviewed it is, the idea too of to retain people, there has to be some sort of upward path to mobility. I mean, for some people, yeah, it's just money and production, and that's fine. They're like, leave me alone, let me just run my business. But I think
Mhm.
also you want to elevate people who are doing a good job and doing well into a leadership role or an opportunity to make some more, I wouldn't call it, it's not passive income, but a little more income from not having to do all the things. Um,
Right.
so yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and drop a link to the guide in the chat. I know a lot of times we wait to the end to do that, but I'm gonna go ahead and share it now because I'm feeling nice today. Um,
Yes, absolutely. So when, as a leader, do we want to start thinking about creating a mentorship program?
yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's like everything else. I mean, before you need it is the short answer.
Hmm.
I mean, you need to, and it takes a little time to figure out what you want to do and what you want to include and how you're going to set it up and all those things. But, as far as kind of, I think your real question, Chris, is obviously, is there an agent count number? Is there a production number? Like, is when and where? Um, I would say honestly, if you have more than 3 or 4 agents, especially if one is maybe a little stronger,
Hmm.
that's a really interesting opportunity to start to groom them up. And it may just be a simple conversation. You may just say, "Hey, I had this idea. How would you be interested in helping teach some of the agents or giving a little segment at the team meeting or doing some training or whatever that is?" Because again, if you've got somebody who might be great for this and they don't want to do it, then that's also notable. Another thing that we do have in the guide in our notes, it's a great opportunity to recruit people. There's a lot of people who might really want a role like this. They're like, "Hey, I'm tired of just selling houses. I want to give back. I want to teach younger people how to do the business right." Like it really is an interesting recruiting opportunity to recruit over somebody to mentor people.
Right. And it's also a good recruiting opportunity for the people who want to mentor because, as we know, you take your licensing course and they teach you how to stay legal and about millage points and all those, how to
Right.
manually measure square
How many
footage.
square feet in an acre?
But they don't teach you how to practice real estate in the current market, how to do a market analysis, all of the skills that, in my opinion, you need to help someone buy or sell a home. So there's a real, and let me say, that's by design because there's a million different ways to practice real estate. And, there's no wrong way to do it, even though the LLR might have something to say about that. But there's a million different ways to do it. But there's this huge gap in information. So your agents coming to you freshly licensed there's really so much that they need to learn. And a lot of it is someone walking beside them. You can't read a book. There's no book that teaches you everything about real estate. You have to learn it as you go.
Right.
So that piece is important to attract people to your team as well. If you're brave enough to take on newly licensed agents. I know some people are like, you know what? I'm gonna not do that.
Right.
And that's, depending on where if you have a teacher's heart or not, where I used to broker, uh, other brokers would send agents to us, like,
Right.
hey, I don't have a training program. I
Yeah.
don't have a mentorship program. Go here and cut your teeth and then come back. And, whether they did or didn't, I didn't have specific cases for that but I did hear off and on, like, oh yeah, I sent so and so to you because I don't have a training program.
Right. And don't think, and we're not going to get deep into recruiting here, but don't think that like people don't know. Like if other co-op agents work with your agents and your agents do a great job, like people know they're not dumb. Like they can figure out like, wow, these guys know what they're doing. They're paying attention. They're trained. They communicate well. They do all the things. So
Hmm.
again, another great source of attracting other agents is just freaking being good. And this is a great way to be good. So
Right.
obviously, do you see the guide on my screen, Chris?
Yes,
For some
sir.
reason, it gave me like 900 options to share. They were all named Guide to
No,
Creating a
we see
Mentorship.
your Amazon shopping cart.
Yeah, perfect. Good. I'll share my wish list later. But defining objectives and goals, again, we're not going to read the first part. It's part of what we just said, but what are you looking to achieve with this? Like, is it growth? Is it, hey, we really want to bring on new people, we want to do this? Is it people or don't it doesn't feel cohesive, people don't know what to do, people are always hitting me with questions while especially again if you're in production, if you're in a meeting, people have to wait an hour to get an answer from you that's sort of critical.
Right.
A lot of times I think you'll know like, yeah, I could use an extra body, and again, this is another way to get some support without necessarily adding a salary and or a bonus, another way to supplement a talented person. um,
Right. And we want you, Lee said this earlier, but I want to underline it a little bit. If you're looking to start this for the first time, don't wait until you've got one nostril above the water. Your job as a leader is to look at the horizon and not at your feet. Like that's the worst place for you to be concentrating on is all the minutia of the little stuff. I'm talking with my hands a lot today, and that's new.
okay.
I'm going to sit on them. So that's where we need you looking. You're the visioneer for the team. You're the leader. You have to be looking ahead. And if you don't have the bandwidth to hire and train and develop a mentorship program, that means you're too late. So do it a little bit early, because the best place for a leader is to have a little bit of wiggle room in their schedule so you can think about your business. So kind of like, oh, I always have my best ideas in the shower. That's because you're not drinking from a fire hose information out of a screen. You're away from your screen. You can listen to your internal voice and you get ideas about your life, about your business. So save some wiggle room in your schedule as a leader to think about your business. And if you don't have that wiggle room, go ahead and start your mentorship program. Now
Right.
is the time.
Start today.
But
Give this guy to go.
if you have somewhat, more wiggle room, this is the perfect time to start for
Yeah.
sure. Now.
And this is great. We'll kind of cruise through this. We're not going to read every word of it, obviously,
No.
because people have the guide. But I like this too, determining like, is this like a mandatory? Are you trying to make your training program? Or is
Hmm.
this simply a, hey, we've got some agents, they need to know a little more what to say, what to post on social, what to do, and we've got
Right.
somebody that can help with that. So a little more supplemental. And I think at first, for sure, to the second bullet point, like it definitely makes sense at first to do it as a layer. I mean,
Yes.
if you're trying to start with your entire training and onboarding program, like that could take a minute, but use
Right.
this to help develop those pieces. And that's the other thing, you just get somebody else to collaborate with. Like Chris, we know
Yes.
how magical that is. Sometimes it's just great to have somebody else that's done this say, well, I did it this way. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I never thought of that.
Exactly. And I think too, if you don't have a mentorship program and you don't have a training program, Lee just said it, training programs take a while to develop. Get your mentorship program in first. And that person is naturally going, or hopefully going to go, oh, I created this cheat sheet. I created this
Right.
form. I just emailed this to my mentee or all of my mentees. So they can help you, and that training program will sort of naturally bloom out of your mentorship program so that it makes it easier to create your training program. That said, if you have a training program, most of our training programs last 2 to 3 weeks, a month at most, because you can train your people to death where they're are so in training for so long, they never get on the phone, they never get out in the field, they never make a connection, and then they just kind of die on the vine. So yes, you want to keep your training program 2 to 3 weeks short. We need to do one about training programs. I have a lot of information on that. But that keeping it short, but then if I teach someone about the contract in week 1 and they don't meet someone and show houses and get to write a
Right.
contract for 90 days, they're never going to retain that information. So train them just enough to be dangerous, and then we're going to set up a whole system to support them to recall that and reference that information when they actually need it. And that's when your mentorship programs comes into play.
Yeah. And speaking of resources for that, and we'll share all these and we'll send them all out with the recording as well. But that YouTube channel I just dropped in the chat, there's literally hundreds of videos there on how to do anything. So if you don't have a training program, just take some of those and put them into a freaking playlist for yourself and be like, here's our training program, ready, set, go.
Yes. Take all of our free stuff to help
Yeah.
your agents.
And we'll drop a link to our blog site later. We have an onboarding checklist, all kinds of stuff like that. But I love this identifying program participants. It's really important, right? Are you going to make everybody do it? Is it only if you're new? Is it only if you're below a certain level of production? Like on one level, it doesn't matter, but you just need to pick the parameters that make the most sense.
Right.
And we're big fans of like beta type stuff. Like maybe you don't roll this out and you have one mentor who's never mentored before with 9 mentees. Like maybe this is
Yeah.
let's take our top agent and our bottom agent and put them together for a minute and see what happens.
Right.
But yeah, really important to figure out the audience as well as if this is mandatory for certain people or a certain production level or years in the business number. I had a cool, it's a little off track, but I think it might make sense. When I first joined a team, which was my 6th, 7th month in real estate, I had a really cool team leader who he measured a lot of stuff by number of transactions. In fact, I had like a graduated split based on number of transactions because after I had done 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever, you don't have the same questions. You don't have as many questions. They're not quite as urgent sometimes as like, oh no, what do I put in this blank? I got to send this offer right now. Versus
Right.
like, oh, this is a counter offer. Like I can wait an hour for an answer. So, but I think it's important to figure out what are you measuring? If it's number of transactions they've completed lifetime, it's like, hey, if you've had less than 5 transactions, you need to run through this mentor program. If you've had more, it's optional. So
Right.
just something simple.
And I really like we're going to put everyone through this to give them support. You don't want to, I heard this all the time when I was in production. Well, I've been doing this for 25 years. Well, that's great, but I've seen your track record and I've sold more houses in 6 months than you sold. You know what I mean? Like there's different types of experience. There's longevity and then there's quantity of transaction, to your point. So I like to put everyone through it because someone in an interview will tell you about their decade, 3 decades of experience, and you'll ooh and all over them. But in reality, they're still using the contract from 2018. So I love the idea of putting them through it and in a guise of this is here to support you. So you know our system. So you're not throwing training wheels on someone who doesn't want them. So don't say, oh, this is our new agent platform. You have to be careful with the way you name it because the experienced agents don't want to carry around a new agent binder. They want to tout their experience. So be careful with the way you name it. But this way, you can have that mentor who knows what you're looking for because these people oftentimes are practicing under your name or your brand name. So you want a certain quality of work being done. So get them to go through a transaction with them or a mock transaction and then report back to you and be like, she's got it. No problems. We're good. And then you can kind of back off and say, hey, we love your experience. Thank you so much. This person's here to support you, but then that mentor mentee won't maybe meet as often. It'll just be another, hey, I have a question about where to find this in the drive or whatever. So there's different ways to layer it. Maybe you walk them through their first 5 transactions interactions, and then it's just call this person for support. They have like classes to take and meetings they have to attend during those first 5, and then it tapers off. Or, you can do it to where they have to do it for a certain amount of time, if 6 months or whatever. But I love putting everyone in it. And that also helps the pushback. Well, I don't need that because I'm an experienced agent.
Right.
Oh, it's not personal. Everyone
Right.
does this. And then they're a lot more accepting of, oh, okay, well, if it's everyone, if it's a requirement, then I'll do it. And yeah, it's just to support you, things like that. But really, you want to see how well they write the contract, the type of language that they're using, the type of tools that they're accustomed to using, because as we all know, things change so quickly that you can not sell a house for 5 years and be 2 decades behind in the tech.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing about this, I like you said this, it kind of triggered at my brain. Um, if that's the case for you, if you have some seasoned agents that aren't going to feel good about being mentored, this is how we do it. This is how the team, you can label it however you want. I kind of
Mhm.
like that this is how we do it. Like this is how the team does it. Like
Right.
it's not that you can't go to the board and take the association class on, how to fill out a contract. It's more like these are our best practices, how you turn in a contract. This is how you do these things. This is how our TC part works. This is how this
Yeah.
thing works. So again, if to your point, Chris, if the mentor mentee thing feels weird for your organization, just make it a like this is how we do it, or
Yeah. This
this is the team thing. You got to get acclimated
exactly.
to the team.
And I love them, but I've onboarded and trained hundreds and hundreds of agents. And I had way more problems with the people who came
Right,
to me knowing how to practice real estate than the people who were just fresh out
right.
of this classes. So,
Right. And this stuff, by the way, so a lot of the structure stuff and all is in the actual agreement. So we mentioned it here in the guide, but deeper in the actual agreement at the end of this, there's some context to add, on specifics. So
yeah.
and just having this list of things for people to do, to be honest with you, in our program, um, I had a list very similar to this, but the mentor was so strong. Frankly, she ran with it and came up with more stuff and wrote it down. And next time she did it, she's like, "Oh, here's our guide." Like
Here's their list.
really
Yes.
great. And it felt really great for me too, because I'm normally the one that does all that stuff. It felt really great for me to be able to like, I'm going to empower somebody else to do this. And they frankly probably did a better job than I could have, or at least they were focused on that. And I was doing a bunch of other
Hmm.
things. So they really did an amazing job of pulling this together. But so many things, and we even forget sometimes, like I even have on for newer agents, like stuff like how to open a lockbox because
Oh, yeah.
there ain't nothing worse than like you finally got somebody on the phone. They're ready to go see a house, and you're like, oh my God, I've never opened a door. You want to sit there with your freaking Bluetooth and thing, and
The
that
front
didn't work.
door, when I was in production, the front door was my nemesis. And I would always joke when I'd go out with a new client, I'd be like, listen, I promise you, when we get there, I've shown houses before, but I'm gonna have a hell of a time trying to get in this front door. And
Right.
they'll laugh, and then I get there and
And that
nothing's
happens.
working right. And so yeah, but yeah, that is a good idea. And like you said, this list is not exhaustive. This is just
Yeah.
everything I could think of that I would do to get
Yeah.
my agent ready. And so getting in and starting with this as your bare minimum, you're going to start to figure out, or you'll see where your mentees are struggling and you'll go,
Right.
oh, we need to add this for the next iteration. We're going to always make this better.
Right. And these can be documented, these can be videos. We always recommend having on-demand stuff. Doing it once and having it forever is definitely where it's at. So again, this
Mhm.
could be a divide and conquer. You could be like, hey, I'll do a video on how to negotiate repairs and stuff like that, and you do the contract to close. Like again, it doesn't have to be, you know, go figure this out. Again, we have YouTube videos on some of this stuff. Obviously, some of it's state level because it's contracts and
Right.
license, and all that stuff. But again, one of the greatest things I really got from my team lead when I was on a team was
Hmm.
a lot of really fantastic semantics that I still use to this day. I mean, I've been out of production for a long time, but like I still use some of those techniques in general that he taught me that are just communication skills, letting people freak out for a minute when they get the stuff
Yeah.
and then bringing them back to calmness. But if you're trying to navigate the craziness because they just got an inspection report or whatever, like just things like that, like practitioner stuff that's not, to your point,
Yeah.
Chris, you can't buy a book on it. You can't, whatever.
No.
The best way to learn it is from somebody that has done it. And 9 times out of 10, it's somebody that's done it wrong a bunch and figured out the right way so they can help you with it's more
Yeah.
what not to do a lot of times than it is what to do. Um,
Why do you think I have so many things to share?
right. Yeah,
So
same.
many
I can write.
mistakes.
That's
But
actually that's our quarterly webinar. We'll do all the things
all
not to
the
do.
mistakes we made. So when
Um,
you get to this point that we made this in chronological order. So this is the order in which you need to decide what you're going to do. And then, okay, how are we going to do it? Who's going to agree on what? And this agreement needs to be two-sided and explicit. So everyone gets the same copy. So Lee's my mentor, I'm his mentee. Lee is responsible for these things. Chris is responsible for these things. And everybody initials and makes an agreement because that's transparency is really important because if you don't have it, people fill in the gaps with their own personal experience and it's typically not good things. So making sure everyone understands and agrees on what they're supposed to do, when they are to be paid and how much. Often, well, it depends on your structure, but you can take the mentor pay from the mentee at closing because of this agreement. You can file something with your broker or whatever to pay a certain way, or you can split it like the company pays this amount of money, the mentee pays this amount of money. There's a lot of ways, or the company could pay for it all. I think that all new agents really all of our new agents really need to make that first commission check or their first 5 commission checks. I've been there. Please close. But when you pay for something, you have a different, deeper level of respect for it. So you don't want to make it an astronomical amount, but you do want to make them know that they're paying for this so that they will take it seriously, even if it's mandated, and make sure that they truly appreciate what this person's doing for them. I do think that that holds some weight. Now, if you want to split it to lessen the blow, or maybe make an agreement where you pay for the first 2, I'll pay for the next 3, whatever you want to do. There's different ways to structure it, but do consider that.
yeah, I think that's important. I love, and I'll keep it short. I love my story of my first closing. It was a company lead. I had a 50-50 mentor. I was on either a 70-30 or a 50-50 brokerage split. It's on my wall right there. I have a $1,200 check for my $350,000 first closing. I'm like, this literally doesn't pay my mortgage after 5 months
Oh no.
in the business. But again, to your point, Chris, but again, you're teeing up this concept that this is an investment. It's a thing. Like you wouldn't have this closing if you didn't have the mentor to help you through the repairs and the contingencies and the
Mm-hmm.
closing, even like all those things. And I also just want to say from a compliance perspective, obviously, if you're a team, I mean, all the payment needs to go through the brokerage. Obviously, if you're a team, make sure you're compliant with your broker. Does it need to be on the DA or the whatever goes to the attorney? Are they separate
Yeah.
checks? Is it taken out? But obviously, you can't just write them a check for whatever. I feel like
Thank
that
you.
bears saying, even though certainly
All pay goes through the brokerage. That's
broker
great.
and team people know that. But and then we mentioned this earlier just because I couldn't help it, but recruiting and training mentors, like actually using that as a recruiting platform to say, hey, seasoned agent, like I'd love for you to come over and I can give you a really solid split for helping with this, and you can make an extra X% of every transaction you mentor people on. Like that really is powerful. And I think more than ever, and every time the market shifts a little bit, there are people that are like, I might want to get out of production, or I might want to do less of this, or I might want to do whatever. And so again, I
Mhm.
think it's a really interesting opportunity. There's people that set year-long goals that are like, I want to find another income stream, or I want to do whatever. So, um,
Exactly.
really a great recruiting tool. Like you should always have this in the back of your head of like, man, that person would, if I had that person train my whole team, we'd be crushing it.
Absolutely. And when so you've recruited either internally or externally for your mentors, and then you have new agents joining as your mentees, you need to pair them well. So think about things like, where do they live? What office do they report to? Because you want to make it convenient for both your mentor and your mentee. These people are very busy and important, and they don't have large swaths of time to meet in person. And as much as we can do via video right now, it really helps to meet with somebody in person. So make sure they're located near each other. Make sure they have a great work style. You don't want some type A working 80 hours a week type of person to mentor someone who's like likes to, roll in a little bit later, gets their stuff done in the afternoon and goes home. So make sure those things line up, and also the aspirations of these people. If someone comes in and is like, I want to be a top producer and has that real fire in their belly, then match them with someone who they can sort of emulate. And so be sure when you're bringing people on, asking them those leading questions so that you understand how to match them with their mentor.
Yeah. And that said, I will throw this in. I couldn't agree with that more, but I will throw this in that sometimes that person, the mentee in particular, does potentially need to change some habits. They need to get more comfortable talking to people. So there's a delicate line there. And Chris, I couldn't agree more that
Mhm.
if they're like polar opposite, like that's not going to work.
Yes.
But again, and this is one of my deep passions, and it's not technically mentorship, it falls under that umbrella. We almost always have really strong, seasoned, older, whatever you want to call them, agents. And we've
Mhm.
always got new people coming in who are more tech savvy, more social savvy, know how to do things in a different way. And getting those people together, I think, is really powerful because they can honestly learn a lot from each other. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot that can be done there. And so again, same thing for the mentor. Like they're learning. People used to always ask me, why do you go speak about like your operations and like what you guys do and all that stuff? Like, why don't what's the value in that? And I'm like, every time I explain it, I think of something different. Or I'm like, ooh, why do I do it that way? Or oh, we could do it this way. Like it's just helpful to kind of have that. So again,
Yeah.
we're not saying here they have to be like twins or best friends,
Right.
but just make sure they're compatible enough that it's not going to be like I can't ever get them on the phone because they're always, selling a house and I want to sell a house.
Exactly. Your
So
communication and support within the program, I almost said operation, within the operation needs to be a really high level. So your mentors and mentees, constant stream of information. If one can't reach the other, it's a source of frustration, and nobody needs that more of that in the real estate world. So talk about things and then facilitate that communication to whoever is overseeing the mentorship program. What's the feedback? What's going well? What isn't going well? How can we make it better? Just talk. This isn't set it and forget it, is the point we're making here.
yeah, yeah,
Communicate about it, make it better.
yeah. And to that point, I meant to mention this earlier, and once we got into doing this more consistently, we did do consistent meetings. And it was funny because I would even offer, I was like, do you want me to come teach something or whatever? And sometimes they did, and sometimes they're like, we're good, we have a plan. I was like, great, I don't need more work. Um, but doing it at scale is a thing. Like you could be like, hey, you meet every Wednesday at 9 until you graduate or whatever. So I did want to also mention that this isn't necessarily someone's got 5 people all the time coming from all angles. There are certainly
Mhm.
ways to streamline that. And frankly, that can be really good too, because sometimes people either feel dumb asking a question or like somebody else asks it, or there can be a lot of things, where it's like the group dynamic can actually improve and help with retention, meaning memory retention, not them staying. But like,
Yeah.
when someone says it a different way and somebody does it a different way, and the kind of that, oh, I get it, it works like this. Like there's
Yeah.
power in that, but you're also creating an environment that's designed to ask dumb questions or designed to ask like, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And I think
Hmm.
that's a big difference versus a team meeting where like your newer agent's not going to be like, I don't know what that even means.
I've never heard that word before. No one wants to say that.
Didn't
But
learn that word in real estate school.
that's another benefit to your mentor program is, you know, you're saying something over and over and over and over again, and you're feeling frustrated because, oh, they're not getting it. They're not getting it. Sometimes it takes that second voice, that different voice to come in and say it a different way or at a different time. And it finally clicks. Don't stop saying it because you're planting the seed, you're laying the foundation, but they're going to come in and get it to go, oh, it makes sense now. They need to hear it that 10th time to get it to click because
Yep.
there's a million things you have to learn.
Right. But you're totally right. I love that, Chris. Like you got to say it a bunch and then they're going to be like, oh yeah,
You
Bob's
know what
always
my
saying
mentor
I need
taught
to.
me? And you're like, I've said that 50 times.
Right. Yep.
But I'm glad you got it.
But one of the things I think too that I really see people, I don't want to say drop the ball on, but like I think it's really important to celebrate the achievements and the success. And they can be little things. It can be like you wrote your first contract. It doesn't even have to be accepted, like they can literally
Mhm.
be little milestones. But celebrating this internally, whether it's Slack or at a team meeting or whatever the thing is, um, certainly celebrating them on social. Obviously, be mindful of the message, not like, hey, they wrote their first contract, but
They
you
showed
know,
their first house.
right? Yes, they got their lockbox key. They're ready. Call Jim today. He's ready to sell you a house. But but again, leveraging these on social because it good for recruiting, makes the
Yep.
agent feel good, like all of the thing, get your brand out there without having to say,
Yes.
hey, we're
Chris
number
has
one.
been with us 2 weeks and she just wrote her first contract.
Right.
That's a fantastic recruiting
Right.
ad.
Because everybody that's been in the business for 4 months and hasn't had a closing is be like, wait, what are those guys
Yes,
doing?
exactly. And this is extra important to be mindful of. I mean, I know when you read this, you're like, celebrate achievements and successes. That's corny. Like, we're not trying to fill space here. It's so important because in those early days of real estate, your highs are few and far between, and the lows, oh, they're low and they drag on forever. So, like, the highs are really brief. I wrote a
Right.
contract. And
Yes.
then so what? I don't get paid for another month,
Right.
month and a half.
Or it
Like,
didn't get accepted, or they countered a
yes.
hundred
And then
grand over.
I got a closing. Great. You sold your last listing. Now you're out of business.
Right. Now you
Go
hang
out and
up.
find another one. Like, so those highs are super high, but they are, if you're looking at it on a scale, it's super brief and it goes back down, and the lows are long, long, long. So finding ways to get those highs, more frequently, celebrate them. That's going to get them to stick with it a little bit longer, and they won't get as scared, because when you're on the phone and you're coming at somebody scared, I don't know how I'm going to make my light bill payment. I don't know how I'm going to put food on my table for my family. That scarcity mindset seeps through the phone and it kills the lead. So, figuring out how to get them in this mindset of abundance right out of the gate, it will not only make things more pleasant around the office, but it's going to help them convert better when they get people on the phone.
Absolutely. And I feel like I know people have to be tired of hearing us say this, and I know I say it constantly, but it's the way that stuff gets done and that you get a little better every day,
Mm-hmm.
like 10% better or 1% better, whatever it is. But you've got to start. but you've also got to check and measure and did this work? And again, this can be as deep as you want it to be. If you love crazy spreadsheets and digging into reporting and all that stuff, that's great. It can also be as
Mhm.
simple as like having a piece of paper with check boxes that says, have they written a sample contract? Yes. Have they done a mock showing? Yes. Have they filled out a buyer brokerage agreement? Yeah. Like, again, it
Right.
doesn't have to be complicated, but the reality is, as you do it, you're going to learn. People are going to ask questions. You're going to be like, oh crap, we never thought of that. We need to make a video on that, or we need to have a SOP for that. Um, so, and I know people don't like this answer because people want to like break out their credit card and say, here's my mentor program, just let it happen.
Right.
But if you want to be long in business and if you want to have intentional growth, doing when it's not perfect,
Mhm.
iterating relatively constantly without constantly changing everything, that's the secret sauce. And that's why we say it in every webinar about every topic ever. And why it's last in the guide.
Yep. That's the last step, and that one's ongoing. Rinse and repeat.
Yes, right. A little more soap next time, or a little more toothpaste, whatever that is.
Exactly.
But so we want to include this agreement. This really is almost verbatim. We tweaked it a little bit from the one I used 10 years ago or however long ago that was. Um, but the idea, and we filled in, yeah, so there's some blanks here. And my actual agreement had these blanks. And so we could determine you're a seasoned agent. Great. We just want you to do two. Just do two transactions or do one listing, one buy side. Then you'll have done all the things with somebody, how to turn in the contract, what to do on this, who,
Mhm.
and the TC sign amendments for you, or do you have to sign it? Like all that stuff. So I like having these blank, and I like, frankly, splitting them between buyer and seller because most likely they're not even going to have a seller transaction potentially if they're new.
Right.
You might say zero, or you might say for your first seller, even if it's 5 years from now, you need to do this,
Right.
but your first five buyers, need to go through this program. Generally, they're company leads. You can make a determination if it makes sense to do sphere leads or anything like that. Um, that's also why I liked the number of transactions. And we, of course, had anomalies. Somebody come to me like, this is my own house. Like, I need some help on it, but I'm not going to pay a split to myself from myself, whatever. Like, again, you can't have a bunch of exceptions, but you can use your brain and people can say, oh, this one's a rental. What does that mean? And you'd be like, just keep the money, but we'll still help you with the basics. Or, you can use your good senses.
Use your best judgment here.
And, and then we put this again, this technically would be a blank for you. Um, Whatever you agree to. And again, it's going to be based on the list of what they do. I want to say we did 10% on ours, but again, we got it pretty well structured. The mentor herself wasn't like all over the place. It didn't hurt her production at all. She would just take people along with her. That was what was cool. Is like, which to be fair, that's actually how I trained her when she came on. It was like, let's go to a closing together. It's my closing, but come see it, come feel it, come see what that does. Let's do an open house together. Let's go to an inspection together. It's
Mhm.
really just those things. I mean, they could almost, I don't want to oversimplify this, they could almost just tag along on a lot of stuff and learn a lot.
Right.
You want to have some structure to that. Um,
Yeah. Because it's like walking into a new place. When you're the agent, you're supposed to be the leader. People are looking to you for what to do, what to say. And even if you haven't had a closing before, when you walk your clients in for your first one, and you go, hey, this is before the attorney comes in. Hey, the attorney's going to come in. They're going to ask you to do X, Y, and Z. You sort of give them the overview. You can omit the information that it's your first closing. You're going to reassure them of this is one of my old mentors used to say this. You say, here's what we just did. Here's what we're doing now. Here's what's coming next. Every time you communicate with your client, here's what we just did. Here's what we're doing now. Here's what's going to happen next. And that simple clarifying, proving to them your value of what you just helped them through, what we're doing now, and then setting that expectation. If you can get your people to do that, oh man, your customer satisfaction levels go up so high. And it's the simplest thing, but nobody takes the time to do it.
Yeah, we had, I probably shouldn't share this, but we had a mock showing that we did sort of as part of the mentor program. It was really just the whole team, but it was related to it. And we had several of the agents on the team who were fairly experienced agents say crazy things like, "Oh, I just wait in the kitchen while they look at the house." And I was like, "Wait, what? Like what, you don't hear their feedback on everything as like you need to shut up, but you need to go with them at least." I know you
Yes.
think you're being nice by waiting in the kitchen, but like, holy cow, that don't do that. Um, so like, unless you could go on every showing with all of them, like you want to know that they've gone through some sort of thing. And like I mentioned earlier, the greatest value I got from my team leader, mentor person was so much of what you just said, Chris. Semantics. How do you approach this? How do you say this so it doesn't freak people out? Like, oh crap, the appraisal came in 50 grand too low. Like, how do you broach that? That's what you're learning. It's not,
Your
yeah,
bedside manner.
right,
Your new doctor isn't going to act the same as your doctor who's been around for 40 years.
right. Exactly. I mean, really, I think that to that point, it's the nuance, it's the stuff you can't read in a book. It's the stuff that like, oh, when you're showing, like point out some important features and also just shut up and hear their feedback, or write it down, or whatever, whatever
Yeah.
that is.
My husband teaches a listing class, and one whole day is about how you behave at the listing appointment. Do you knock? Do you ring the doorbell? Do
Right.
you put your bag? Where do you put your bag down? When do you put your bag down?
You sit down
All of
first.
that. I took his class so many times because I was like, I can't believe he's teaching this. This is incredible. And because that's that's what you need to know, and it's those subtle things that he learned over time. If he put his bag down too early, nope, it's too comfortable in my house. You have to wait until you build that, you feel like you've earned the rapport before you put the bag down. So anyway.
No, that's such a great example. I couldn't agree with that more. All of those things. And not 90% of it's like psychology. It's literally like,
Mhm.
are you going to go sit down at their kitchen table? Or are you going to ask them where they want to sit? Are you going to ask them if they want to sit? Or so like, how do you find that blend of being in charge, but also not just like barging
But
into the
you're also a guest in their
right,
home. Ooh,
right.
it's such a fine line, and it's so fun to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I love that. And I think, things in this, and these can be either like check boxes in the agreement. Like maybe everybody doesn't have to do all these things. So again, to that same point, like, okay, you need to do 5 buyer transactions and you're
Mhm.
already good at this, and this. So again, these could be line items where you're like, the focus of this mentorship will be this, and this. We're not saying necessarily that like you have to do all of these things. The goal is just to get you something that you can turn into what you want.
Right.
So, and then, yeah, and I always have something like this at the end. It's just kind of like, whatever everybody agrees to is fine. Like, I don't care. Y'all want to do more or you want to list one together, co-list it, like whatever, that's fine. Just, you know, it's all good. But like I said, with the lady who ultimately on our team became the mentor, within her first week, it might have been less than a week, we went to a closing together. We went to an inspection together. We did all of these things and it paid such dividends. I don't think I spent that much time with her after that beyond training and like my job, but like
Right.
she got it. We did it.
Mhm.
But again, to your point, Chris, we did it. We didn't sit and talk about it. I didn't
Right.
send her a guide on like how to hold open houses. We did it and we talked to real humans and we followed up with them and we, like,
Like experience style education. And that's why you need this if you have a training program to get that experience, because book smart and street smart, very different.
yes, indeed. And again, like I mentioned, our YouTube channel has a ton of videos for this stuff too. So if you just want to say like, hey, mentor, go watch this video and teach it to people tomorrow, great. Easy button. I do want to give a shout out to Anthony Lamacchia with the crushitinre.com, I think is the URL. This is also a great program that you can buy. Speaking of, you just swipe your credit card and do the thing. They have a great training program that you can just buy. Again, you need to do like a real mentor program with your own things that you want people to learn. But I did
Right.
want to mention this. It just came up as another paid a paid resource that we don't get. There's no benefit to us. It's just a good program that people use. I'll drop it in the chat super quick. Um, but really good stuff. But again, it's not just an easy button of like, hey, here's your login. Let me know when you sell a house. These could be
Right.
supplemental materials to make these things happen. So I did want to mention that. I just thought of it while we are on. Sorry to
I
throw
love
that
it.
at this, but and then have everybody sign it and put it in their file, turn it into the office, like whatever that is that you need to do. If you use something like a contract cover sheet or something to turn it in, make sure there's a space for, whether it's just under referral or however you want to do it.
Mhm.
But make sure it gets handled, when the contract gets turned in before the documents go out and things like that. So you don't have any weird, like, yeah, I got a check for $2,500. Like, oh, we need 500 of that
I
back.
need
Sorry.
my cut. I need my cut. I love it.
So, but
Uh,
that is the essence of it. And I know we went through it in more detail. It's still pretty short. I mean, it's like 7 or 8 pages, including the agreement being 2.5 of those pages. Um, but really hope that this is useful. Hopefully, it inspires you to at least think about what this might look like for you or take some first steps um, to do that. Chris, do you want to add anything to that? We mentioned obviously we're gonna go in at the very end into another thing really quick, but
yeah, we're gonna send you the recording of this tomorrow, and we're gonna send you a link to the guide, which is already in the chat. I think we can drop it again really quick,
yeah, I
but
did.
we're gonna tell to you for all of 2 minutes about what we do and how we help our clients. So this is our unabashed sales pitch at the end. So we are Amplified Solutions. And the problem that we solve for our clients is many of them, all of them, when they come to us, they have little to no systems set up within their follow-up boss accounts. And their agents don't understand what they need to be doing or how to do it. And also they aren't monitoring the leads within their database or know how they are worked. So how do we solve that problem for them, Lee?
So yeah, typically, obviously, we evaluate the business first. Like, what do you have? What's good? What's bad? What are people doing? What are people not doing? But obviously, our whole team has years of experience in operations, in CRM, running brokerages and teams, and so really, helping come up with. We have a lot of templated guides and handbooks. Actually, I'll drop a link in a minute to find most of them. But a lot of times we'll take those templates and really customize them with people for their business. So similar to what we did in this webinar today, just linking up with somebody one-on-one about their business and doing it. But
Right.
creating those guides and SOPs and on-demand training and resources so that you can grow and so that you're not the only person who has to constantly be like, how do I do this? What do I put in the blank? How do I
Yeah,
turn this contract? I finally got a contract. What do I do?
I
Uh,
love it.
so and then obviously we also provide an account manager
Mhm.
who is really tied into their account. And additionally, an admin within their follow boss account that's actually finding opportunities. Like, hey, this guy was a priority alert 4 hours ago and nobody has called them yet. I think that's a big part of it as well. It's not necessarily a quantity as much as like, hey, this person literally requested a showing 2 hours ago and no one's called
No
them.
one reached out to them.
And what we do internally, just so you guys know, we actually build actual like rules around that
Hmm.
so that we get to be the bad guy and take the lead away, but only because it follows a certain set of parameters. Hey, well, you
Right.
can take a YLOPO high priority. If nobody's called it in 2 hours, you can reassign it to whoever's going to call first or things like that. We don't just randomly assign leads to people. There's rules
No,
approved by
definitely
you.
not. So to list it out, we set up proven systems that we use with all of our clients across North America and rules and definitions around stages, smart lists, automations, integrations, all the things. And then we train their teams and provide them with written handbooks, guides, SOPs. And then we hook them up with their account manager who oversees the leads and the admin within their team and get their account to nudge agents to keep that data integrity really high and help you convert more leads into transactions. I dropped our website. If you want to check that out, see more about what we do, there's a link, it's in bold at the top. It's a free follow-up boss assessment. So you fill out that information and you get an in-depth view of your account and what we can do for you. And there's also a link to book a call to talk about it in person. There you
Awesome.
are. There you have it.
Cool. Hit us up if you want, or you can just reply to the email that goes out with the recording.
Yes, you do
But
that too.
really appreciate you guys being on. It's always fun to talk about this stuff. And again, we really aim to bring value. Obviously, it's great to tell you about what we actually do for a living. But really fun. And Chris, it's always fun to do these with you and go through. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Appreciate you too. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.